Okay, so we're diving into the world of construction cost reporting today. And I know what you might be thinking. Spreadsheets, jargon, maybe not as exciting as that true crime podcast you're listening to. But stick with us because this stuff, trust me, it gets really interesting. It's like getting a crash course in how buildings go from those initial blueprints to, actually existing in the real world, and all without ever having to set foot on a construction site. We're going to be talking about budgets, contracts, risk
The
assessment.
whole shebang.
Exactly. And to guide us through all of it, we've got the guidelines from the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. RICS for short. They're like, I don't know, the Jedi Council of the property and construction world. They set the standards with something like 118,000 professionals all over the globe following their lead.
Yeah, they're a pretty big deal.
So, with that, let's talk cost reporting. Like, what even is it?
Well, at its core, it's all about keeping you informed.
You being the client.
Right, the client. It's about knowing where your money's going every step of the way during a project.
So imagine you're building a house. You wouldn't just hand over a blank check and cross your fingers, right?
Hopefully not.
You'd want updates, you'd want to know what's going on, and that's where this all comes in.
Yeah, it's all about transparency and accountability, giving you, the client, that clear and consistent picture of, the project's finances. Think of it as your, I don't know, financial compass, guiding you through all the complexities of construction costs.
Oh, I like that, a financial compass, because let's face it, construction projects, they can feel like you're navigating uncharted territory, especially when you're talking about the budget.
Oh, for sure. And that's where, those RICS guidelines are really helpful, actually. They give you a framework for clear and consistent cost reporting. And honestly, that's essential for any successful project.
You've got that right. So we've got our trusty compass ready to set sail into the world of cost reporting. But before we do, we need to make sure we're all speaking the same language. And that means tackling some of those construction terms that can be a little, shall we say, dense.
Yeah, dense is one way to put it.
But that's why you're here, to break it all down for us.
Absolutely. Happy to demystify.
So with that, let's talk about the bedrock, the foundation of any good budget. Fixed costs, right?
Yeah, exactly. Fixed costs. There is, well, the name kind of says it all. Fixed. Think of it like, I don't know, buying a car. You've got your sticker price, that destination charge. Those are your fixed costs. And in construction, it's the same idea, right? Cost of the land, architect's fees, permits, all that good stuff.
So those are pretty straightforward then. You know what you're getting into from the get-go. But then there are these things, variable costs, right? And that's where things, I imagine, can get a little interesting.
Yeah, you could say that. Those variable costs, they're the, how do I put it? They're the moving targets, the unknowns that can pop up on a project.
Oh, like those unexpected detours.
Exactly. To keep it the car analogy, imagine, I don't know, you suddenly realize you need new tires. Or worse, you need a whole new engine. And in construction, it could be anything, really. Unforeseen site conditions, like hitting bedrock where you didn't expect it, or, those fluctuations in material prices we talked about.
Speaking of fluctuations, it sounds almost, I don't know, elegant, but I have a feeling it's not.
Yeah, not so much.
What kind of budgetary headaches are we talking about here?
Well, think back to, say, 2021, that global steel shortage, remember?
Can't say that I do, but I'm all ears.
Well, imagine needing steel beams for your project, and suddenly the price doubles.
Ouch!
Exactly. And that's just one example. That's a fluctuation. And it's why those RICS guidelines really stress the importance of, factoring those potential swings into your cost reporting.
So how can you possibly plan for that? It's not like you can predict the future of, steel prices, right?
Well, you can't predict it exactly, no, but you can definitely prepare for it. And that's where those provisional sums come in.
Ah, yes. The good old just-in-case fund, right? Every project needs one.
Pretty much.
But there are different types of provisional sums, aren't there? It can't be as simple as just having one rainy day fund for every possibility.
You're right. It's a little more nuanced than that. The RICS guidelines, they break provisional sums down into two main types: defined and undefined.
Defined and undefined.
Yeah, so defined provisional sums, those are for the items you know you'll need, but maybe you don't have all the specifics totally ironed out yet.
Okay, so for example, you're going to need bathroom fixtures, but you haven't picked out, say, the exact faucets and tiles and all of that yet.
Exactly. You know it's coming, but you don't have every single detail nailed down. Now, undefined provisional sums, those are the real wild cards. They're there to cover those totally unforeseen circumstances that tend to, well, pop up on projects.
Like using our house example from before, it'd be like, I don't know, suddenly realizing you need to reinforce the foundation because of some hidden termite damage or something.
Precisely. And this is where clear communication, careful planning, those are absolutely crucial. In fact, the RICS guidelines, they actually highlight this case study where a project, it ran into some major delays and cost overruns because they didn't properly account for undefined provisional sums.
That's rough. Definitely a tough lesson to learn. So we've got our fixed costs, our variable costs, with their fluctuations and provisional sums. But we're not quite done yet, are we? There's another term I know is lurking out there. Loss and expense. And that just sounds expensive.
Yeah, well, it can be, but it's also where things get really interesting, especially from like a risk management point of view.
Loss and expense, what's the deal with that?
Okay, so picture this. You're in the middle of your, perfectly planned construction project, and then bam, a pipe bursts. Floods a whole section you just finished.
Oh no, talk about bad timing.
The worst, right? Well, that's where loss and expense comes in. It's basically all the costs that you end up facing when things go sideways.
Like when that pipe bursts.
Exactly. So you've got your cost of repairs, obviously, but then there are also the costs of the delays.
Right, because everything gets pushed back.
Yeah, work stops, materials might be damaged, deadlines get pushed back.
And we know time equals money, especially when it comes to construction.
Oh, absolutely. And this is actually where those different contract types, the ones we talked about earlier, they really come into play.
Because it makes a difference who's footing the bill for those unexpected costs.
Exactly. So remember those lump sum contracts?
The ones where the contractor gives you a fixed price up front?
Yep, that's the one. Now, if a pipe bursts and it wasn't specifically outlined in the contract, those extra costs, they often fall on the contractor.
So it's in their best interest to think ahead, anticipate any potential risks, and build that into their initial bid.
Exactly. Now, on the flip side, you've got your reimbursable contracts, right? Where the client takes on more of that risk.
Because they're basically reimbursing the contractor for the actual costs as they come up.
Right. So that burst pipe, those additional costs go straight to the client.
It's a trade-off then. More predictable costs up front with a lump sum, but potentially higher risk if something unexpected happens.
Yeah, that's the gist of it.
Okay, so let's say I'm holding this cost report in my hand, and I'll be honest, it's a little intimidating. Numbers, charts, acronyms. What should I even be looking for here? What are the red flags that would make me, the client, say, hold on a minute, we need to talk about this?
Okay, so one of the first things you want to check is how those provisional sums are being managed. Are they being used appropriately? Are they being adjusted as the project goes along? Let's say, for example, you see that a big chunk of those undefined provisional sums, that emergency fund, let's say that's been depleted really early on in the project.
That can't be good.
It might not be a good sign, no. It could mean the project is hitting some unforeseen problems, or maybe that initial risk assessment, it wasn't quite as thorough as it could have been.
So communication is key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is where having that open line of communication with the quantity surveyor, that's crucial.
Because they're the ones who really understand these reports inside and out.
Exactly. They're like our financial guides through this whole process. They can explain those fluctuations, analyze the provisional sums, and give us that all-important context we need to make the right decisions.
So it's more than just, crunching numbers. It's about understanding the story those numbers are telling.
Exactly. And that's where these budget holder reports come in. Section 4.2 of the guidelines talks about these. They're really useful for breaking down the budget based on who's responsible for what. So you've got the structural engineer looking after their piece, the electrician's got their costs, and so on. It's all about fostering accountability, making sure everyone's on the same page, and working towards that shared financial goal.
It sounds like it's not just about managing the money, it's about managing the people and their expertise too.
100%. It's about clear communication, realistic expectations, and everyone being on the same page about the project's financial, I guess you could say, landscape.
This has been incredibly helpful. I feel like I've graduated from Cost Reporting 101.
Glad to hear it.
So as we wrap up here, any final words of wisdom for our listeners out there?
I think the biggest takeaway is that, knowledge is power. The more you understand these concepts, even without being a construction expert, the better equipped you'll be to ask the right questions, make smart decisions. And ultimately, that's what it's all about, making sure your project is a success.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So next time you're walking by a construction site, just take a moment to think about all the moving parts, all those numbers and contracts and conversations happening behind the scenes.
It's a lot more complex than it looks from the outside.
It really is. But with a little guidance and the right tools, like those RICS guidelines, navigating the world of construction costs doesn't have to feel like, an impossible task.
You got it.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into construction cost reporting. Until next time.